Hi, I'm Charlotte Smith of Champoeg Creamery, and this is rawmilkpro.com, your place to get tips and advice on running your raw milk microdairy. And if you're a raw milk consumer, you can join us here to learn how you can best support your raw milk farmer as well. Today I want to talk about pricing your raw milk sustainably. This is one of the most important elements of your business. I want to encourage you to make sure you're taking care of yourself so that you're in business for many years to come. My family has been drinking raw milk for about 8 years, and in those years before we got our own cows, there were several times where our raw milk dairy went out of business, typically without any notice at all. We would just show up to get our milk and it wasn't there. A couple of times it came down to the wife giving the husband an ultimatum. It's either me or the cows. Now this may sound to you like unfair or something, but if you are in the raw milk dairy business, you understand that it's a very hard lifestyle to lead. Milking happens at breakfast time and dinner time. You miss lots of family events, family time together. Since I first started producing raw milk about 4 years ago, I see a trend where people get into the business and they charge just a few bucks per gallon, just enough to build a customer base. And they can do this because of the adrenaline and the momentum initially, but after a while they realize they just aren't making enough money. So again, they either run out of business very quickly or they start cutting corners. They don't call the vet when necessary, they can't afford to hire help, and it really wears on them until pretty soon they shut down. If this is you and you're doing all the work yourself and you're barely charging enough money to cover costs, then when something catastrophic happens, and it does happen with dairy cows, you can't afford to replace a cow, or a cow doesn't get pregnant and then dries up, or somebody in this family gets sick and you just can't hire anyone to help. If this is you, then again, when these catastrophes happen, you might just decide to cease production. And leaves 20 or 30 or more families without their raw milk source. So they may call me or another colleague, and we can always absorb a few of them, but certainly not all. And it's heartbreaking to hear the stories from mothers whose children need the raw milk to help control their eczema and their asthma, or even the adults that are using raw milk to control their myriad health problems, and all of a sudden they're without and there's nobody there to help them. Another important part of this is that it seems to be not socially acceptable to say that we shut down because I couldn't make enough money at our raw milk business. So they say something like, well, the cow died or grandma got sick, so we just can't milk cows anymore. But what really happened was they did not price their milk initially in a sustainable way. So when these natural fluctuations occur in the business cycle over the year of dairying, there's no cushion to take care of those issues. When you're considering your raw milk production costs in order to price your milk, there's all the obvious costs to consider, but there's also a lot of less obvious costs that producers leave out, such as a mortgage or rent on their land. Cows are really hard on equipment, so you're going to begin replacing equipment as soon as just a few months after you start milking cows. There's milk that's going to be dumped when customers don't show up to pick it up, and that usually happens at Christmas time, spring break time, June and August. A third of your customer base disappears and you still have to milk the cows. So all these costs have to be considered when you're pricing your milk. Also, remember the time spent with customers and customer service, your electricity to run your well or your barn and the equipment, your ice machine, time spent hauling hay and unloading hay and feed. So by the time people consider what they think are their costs of raw milk production, they figure they're making about $10 or $11 an hour, which is a really low wage especially if you have a family. But in reality, I'll bet they're making about $3 or $4 an hour, and this is just not sustainable for anyone. Please do not be bullied by those consumers who have never owned a dairy cow or lived the dairying lifestyle. There's a lot of cyberbullying going on Facebook and places like that, where consumers will try to force us to keep our milk prices artificially low. If you're going to be in this business, you've got to have a really strong backbone, and you've got to unapologetically and confidently price your milk at a sustainable price, and let that be it. Don't let the consumers bully you into keeping it artificially low. I want to share this idea with you. Bottom line, if you have the resources to produce raw milk, and that means the land, the ability to have be around large livestock, the skills necessary to milk the cows, and the money to invest initially. If you have these resources and you do not price your milk in a sustainable way so that you will be in business from years to come, in the years to come for your customers, then you are stealing from those people who need your product the most. I know that sounds like a really bold statement, and I mean it to be. Again, if you've got the resources to produce raw milk and you don't price it accordingly so that then you're out of business in a year or two, you are stealing from those consumers who rely on you for that nutrient-dense food that heals their family. So don't be one of those raw milk producers who gets into business, spends a lot of money, loses a lot of money, and then goes out of business, leaving a lot of desperate consumers in their wake. Instead, look at every single cost you may have, consider everything, price your milk sustainably, and have a fair compensation for all the hard work and the stress and how it wears down your family life. Make sure you've got a cushion in there for hiring help and all those expenses so that you can produce raw milk for many years to come. Now I want you to go down below this video to the comment section and leave a comment on what you learned, but also if you think you are pricing your milk sustainably. This is where the discussion continues, and it gives us raw milk producers a chance to build community and learn from each other. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you really soon.